Wer kann hier Deutsch? Okay, tough shit for the rest of you. I do this in German. I can German. No, unfortunately, I had to agree for the stupid minority amongst you. Never mind. I won't go into this. Mark is what in German, we have a great word that doesn't translate. It's what you call a Nervensäge. See? Somebody who, it's a nerve saw, literally, somebody who just carries on grinding and grinding. And I find the only way you can shut somebody like him up is by saying, yes, fine. So, shut the fuck up, Mark. Okay, I come to DÜSSELDORF and do this. And it's a pleasure, because he runs a pretty cool conference, and he has been doing this for a while, and he's going to Berlin this winter, this autumn. So, and I've heard now in the circles of younger and web fitter people than me, this Beyond is the cool place to go, to be. So I'm here because it's cool. That makes me cool. Kinda. But before I came here, I had this, I thought Beyond tellerrand. I could never, it's just a weird mix of Deutsch and English. So I thought, why would somebody name a company after a French diplomat? It was really, Talleyrand. I remember this from history lessons. That guy was a certified arsehole. I mean, he was a horrible diplomat, and nobody liked him, and he did all the D's on the back. And then I saw a picture, and I thought, well, there's Mark. In a few years' time. So now I've been told since that. Does everybody know what tellerrand actually means? You're non-German speakers? Yes. You have been gebrieft? Yes. Good, okay. So we're looking over the tellerrand. What a weirdest name for a conference. I'm surprised that he made that work. So the issue here is always, as you've noticed, I've already started in English, but I really should be, I was in Barcelona, which would be the third from the left. That would be Catalan, which I don't speak. My Spanish is lousy. My Dutch is funny. I mean, the Dutch laugh when I speak Dutch. My French is equally funny. So I decided to speak what I guess these days is the European language, which is English, which is it's good and bad. Fuck, it's gone already. That was quick. Wasn't there just a European flag there? Yeah. What happened? Oh, whatever. Oh, fuck. See, this is what happens when you don't practice your keynote beforehand. Never mind. You know what I'm getting at. What I'm trying to impress on those of you who, maybe there are some people from outside of what we call Europe, is while we reduce ourselves to one language, we still celebrate our little local dialects, probably more so than ever, because in Barcelona they speak two languages. And all of us, in other words, speak two languages, and you Brits and you Yanks, you don't, so we are ahead of you. Because when we turn around, we can speak amongst ourselves, and you have no idea what we're fucking talking about. Whereas when you speak, we understand you. Ha! In other words, the NSA can't hire enough interpreters to get our dialects down. Unless we speak in HTML, which is a wicked dialect, because everybody reads it and writes it. Now, just as a quick intro, you heard I designed type. In a way, it's always been a sideline for me. I would never call myself a type designer because it's boring, and I have other people doing the boring work for me. Just a quick overview so you know where I'm coming from. So that's what I've been doing the last 50 or 60 years by the looks of it. Otherwise, if you want to see what I do and what we're doing, just go to those URLs and we're done. I don't need to show my portfolio. I will show some work, just that you know what's going to happen today. I won't do what American speakers normally do, that they tell you what they're going to tell you, and then they tell you, then afterwards they tell you what they told you. I just tell you what I'm going to tell you. This is good for me because I now remember what the fuck I was going to tell you about. The title was, and Mark asked me for a proper title, and I couldn't think of anything. As far as I'm concerned, the web is a type medium. I mean, we read more than we ever did because it's easier, it's in our hands, it's everywhere. It has nothing to do with what medium it is. We read and we read and we read. We may only read shorter text, we may read Facebook or Twitter, but we read. Everybody reads all the time. So type's role is to not only get alphanumerical data across, but also to carry brands, to carry emotions across. And the question I always get asked, who needs so many typefaces? Well, let me test you first, how much you even appreciate the differences. Does anybody know this one? You all know it. Not this one. See, the first one was the clone, Arial. This is the real one, Helvetica. And as I have been saying for a long time, the reason why Arial is so ubiquitous is because it's so ubiquitous. It's everywhere because it's everywhere. And this is next to it. So this is the space that a type designer works in. I mean, most of you don't see the fucking difference, right? And those who do are qualified to be type designers. Because what we do is we move in a space that's defined by whatever, a couple hundred characters. Maybe it's really only 70 or 80 shapes that have to look like, an A has to look like an A wherever you are in the world, in the Latin alphabet. And we shape the little differences in between there. So basically we only have, well actually it's like in musicians, they only have 8 notes in our music and a few halves in between. And they make amazing melodies with this. We as type designers, or in fact as designers, we don't really make melodies, we make the sound. Because the melodies get written by the writers. I mean, the writer comes to me with a text and I give it a sound, a specific sound. Talking about Helvetica, some of you might have seen me in the Helvetica movie, and people say, oh, you hate Helvetica. No, you can't hate a typeface. I mean, you can't hate a thing. You can hate people, you can hate assholes, but you can't hate a typeface. It's just, how can you hate a typeface? It's not relevant enough. But I hate the attitude. I hate a lot of people who, even hate's a strong word, I don't like people who are basically lazy, which is fine. I'm lazy. We're all lazy at times, who then turn the laziness into a principle. They use Helvetica because they can't be bothered to look up something else or to think about the jobs. We use Helvetica because it incorporates, it embodies objectivity and neutrality as we know it, all this crap. They're just too fucking lazy to look for something else. But I am guilty by association because I was part of the Neue Helvetica, not Helvetica, Neue. Back in '83, I was on the team at Linotype who redesigned it. So I'm guilty. So it also means I know what I'm talking about. Now and again, a really great job comes up. We did this typeface for Mozilla. I started off with the typeface for Telefonica, actually, who were doing an operating system that then went over to Firefox. The coolest thing about this is we got paid for it. Ralph and I got paid for it fairly decently. Properly, professionally, but the font is free. You all know the difference between typeface and font? I'm not going to bore you with it. There is a difference. Typeface, I design typefaces and you use fonts, okay? Very easy, actually. The font is the physical embodiment, as much as you can talk about a physical embodiment in a digital environment. It's the product. I design the letters. So this is for us, of course, the coolest thing. You design something that is in a professional environment, and then you get it all for free. Isn't that fucking cool? I think it's fantastic. And it's not a bad typeface either. It reads pretty well on all sort of screens, which was the purpose of it in the first place. So go and download it it's on GitHub, it's on all the various Mozilla and Firefox sites. Now, I could now spend the next 2 hours or 2 days going on about those subtle differences again. They do matter, that the shape of an L or a capital I or an A and a 3 matter when it comes to, for example, all of you have had the issue of having to input a password or a name on a little iOS or whatever screen. And then when the L's look like I's or the 1's look like I's, it gets really difficult. And that's why we do have little differences in the characters. Again, they can't be too far away. But if you look at Helvetica and Arial in the middle there, you know, you can't distinguish between a capital I and lowercase l. You can when it's printed only just, but you can only if you know the words. And if you know German, you can distinguish German words. If you don't, you're fucked. So that's another space we have to move in. And if any of you wants to ever take up type design, here's a little warning. That's the first check I got from International Typeface Corporation in 91, $1.09. So this is not a way to get rich quickly. And I've been doing this for what, 40 years now, something? Almost 40 years. And I still have to go and speak at a free conference. For me, free. I mean, I don't get paid. Do I pay for this? And I don't pay. At least I don't pay, which is cool. Now, if I was a multimillionaire, I would send an assistant. Just another example here. So, you know, this is the detailed word, distinction between lowercase l's and i's and stuff. And then you design a family that we did based on my meta, 4 weights for sans and for serif. And if you do this for science, which means all the people who deal in dead languages, who decipher Bibles that were written 1,500 years ago, or the physicist, the chemist, they need about 2,500 characters to translate their language into our alphabet. So this is a brief little video that shows you how many characters you have to design, so be warned. It's way fucking boring. This will only last about 13.5 minutes. Don't worry. So you get this? I mean, some of you might have seen there's some overlap has not been removed. This is it's a little software that's called a spitter that spits out all the characters into a PDF so you can check what you're doing. Because when you're talking about, in this case, I just said 20,000 characters at least, you can't look at individual characters anymore. You go crazy. You have 4 or 5 people working on this, and then how do you ever find out who's done what and who's forgotten one? It's just totally insane and really, 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 really boring. And I don't do that. I have people who have to go through this, the boring stuff. You know, when you're young and you're learning a business, you have to do the boring stuff. My God, this is longer than I thought. And I've seen it 5 times. Can you imagine how boring that is? Okay, la-di-la-di-la. So, anybody wants to still be a type designer, contact me afterwards. And I can tell you some more horror stories. So people ask me, you know, because I also, as Mark mentioned, I do have more bicycles than anybody needs and more books than anybody needs, and probably more music than we all have more musics than we could ever listen to. We all have more books than we could ever possibly read. But the formula is still very simple. It is this one. Right? Very simple formula. You always need one more. Every year I say, I'm not going to buy one more book. And then I come home and there's 2 books in it because somebody sent me 2 books. Or I clip it from some magazine and I think I've got to have just this one book. And then I go to the bookshop, which is lethal, and then I walk out with 6 books, of course, because I need those. And of course you don't ever read them. Just a little test, when we're talking about, now I'm coming to the little branding issue. The Germans might know this typeface here. You've certainly, well, I saw it this morning because I came here on the train. So type in this environment, and that was my little coffee cup this morning. People, why do companies pay a few $100,000 to have that exclusive typeface? Partly it is because technically you can do stuff that you can't maybe do with one off the shelf. You can optimize, you don't have to pay licenses ever again. You can give it away to your service people, you can sell it. The Deutsche Bahn has made money by selling licenses for the typeface that we designed for them. But it's the brand. Wherever you go, even people like you or my mother or anybody who doesn't know what a typeface is, they kind of feel, you know, this must be the Deutsche Bahn because it's kind of like, it feels like it. They don't know this. And that's the wickedness. That's why type works like background music in the supermarket. You're not aware of it, and that's why it works. It gets you when you're not listening. Now, we have a great brand in Germany called the Autobahn. And you wouldn't want that as a typeface, would you? Now, you Americans probably expect us to have those signs here because, you know, that's how Germany comes across. We all wear steel helmets and, you know, walk around like this and speak like this, which actually a lot of us do, quite frankly. I mean, there is no smoke without fire. Hey, that's wrong. This is wrong. I can speak the German properly, yeah? The English. I speak the English. No, we have a brand, and the brand has to do with the color and the typeface. This is the Autobahn brand, and even though my son, who's English, still laughs when he goes to the Ausfahrt. It's so funny in English. Oh, guck mal, Daddy, it says Fahrt. But that's the brand. And what does the brand have? It has the color and it has the typeface. If you change the typeface overnight and you would wake up and drive along, you wouldn't know you're in Germany anymore. When I go to Britain, I get the transport alphabet, which is great. Also on blue, I go to the States and I get this terrible old tired typeface made in prison, or the signs are made in prison and they look that way. So that's the German, it's a very, very German brand for you. I've got a fucking fly on my back of my head. No, it's not funny. Look at this. Whatever that thing is, go away. God, time to clean up this place. Now, as you also know, and we could spend the next, again, I threaten you the next 2 hours. You know that type isn't type. We all know that there are things out there made by a company in Seattle that you abbreviate as IE, which, as you all know, makes your work really difficult. You spend 80% of your time just getting that shit right, unless you ignore it. There are still clients out there who use IE6. People use Windows XP because they're big companies and they can't be bothered to change. So whatever we design on our Retina screens at home on a little Macs or on our Retina iPhones doesn't arrive that way. You know that. You need to spend a lot of time on type. This is just from the Typekit page where they give you samples of renderers from all over the place. But for a type designer, this means that, you know, this is how we start. This is Peter Bilak's Fedra. He designed these beautiful characters, and that's the outline, and then he renders them in different pixel sizes. You know, it's, okay, 9 ppm I know is small, but it does happen. And that's what they end up being. So in order to really do it justice, he should go back and design 6 different outlines, just so that the render probably a different size. Of course, he can do it, we can all do it, but nobody's going to pay for that. Nobody's going to pay per pixel size. So we use that horrible technique of hinting, which is another talk that I won't give this year, and I won't ever give it because it is way boring and tedious. Basically, we work with the fact that there are 3 colors, even in black, and that the pixels aren't the same size. They're certainly not square. You can shift them. You can grayscale and anti-aliasing, and you can use all the things that are invisible to our brain, but not to the human eye. The human eye sees those without knowing it sees them. So we can fake type, essentially. It looks better than it actually is. And we spend a lot of time doing that to avoid this sort of shit here, because that's basically what happens at the moment. You know, you put out a website in 16 pixels, and the user, for some reason, squeezes it down to 11 pixels, and it looks terrible. And I know that our website, the Erik Spiekermann website, if you look at it, we have our own typeface in there, which is a version of my unit. It's a little wider, and it hasn't been hinted very carefully. You look at it on most Windows screens, it looks terrible. And this is for somebody like us who, you know, we pride ourselves with our good typography. It's just going to cost us 20,000, well, maybe Italian lira or something, but it's going to cost quite a bit of money to rectify that. I'm not sure whether it's worth it, because by the time we've done it, the browser might be better. And you also know that the difference between the browsers and the render engines, some browsers have their own engines, Apple have their own engines, some browsers ignore hints anyway, like Apple does. So this is very, very much a fight that you can only lose. I do recommend, and I won't go, I could go online, I just tried it, but there are test sites like this outside. As I mentioned, Typekit has a very good overview of how different fonts and different sizes look at different browsers, which of course is always difficult because they're screenshots. Here you can actually go on and test your own text in various browsers. If you use web fonts from various people, you can also test your website in different typefaces. But if you want to test it in all different browsers, it's a whole day of work just for that. Now, this doesn't stop there. The trouble is with us graphic designers, which is what I am by background, is actually, I'm a printer by background, but I'm faking to be a graphic designer right now. We get OpenType now, which is fantastic. It's been around for almost 20 years now, and it's now just coming to the web. And it's coming to the web because it's there, and we want to make better stuff. And essentially, I don't know how long it's going to take, but in a few years' time, there won't be any difference from the point of what we can do with type on screens or paper. There already really isn't if we try very hard, but at the moment there's a lot of workaround, it's really complicated. But us Ponzi designers, we want proportional all-style fonts, we want contextual alternates, we want fraction, we want all this shit. So you end up having, just there's 6 different zeros there, or 7 different zeros. There's, old style, la-di-la, tabular, non-tabular, and there's zero slashed. And those are just alternates for the figures. So you've got 4 or 5 different figure sets. And excess or alternates, it says there in InDesign. Those are just the alternate characters and some of the accents. And you go to a full font, and you have to design all this crap. This is like 600 characters there, just for the languages that you can read in Latin. There is, of course, there is no Cyrillic there, there's no Greek there. Actually, there is, no, there isn't. This is one, what is this? Oh, it's one of my new typefaces that hasn't been published yet. So you imagine adding Greek and Cyrillic to this. You're talking about 600 something character just for one weight and all these features. So I could go on about how to get those features, but I think I'd rather quote a friend. I think, was Elliot here last year? He's the boss, he's the master, he works for Typekit. So go to Elliot's website, and he has a constant, I think his latest entries are a couple of days old. He constantly keeps you up to date, what features work on which browser, how to get to them, and what is safe code to use and what isn't. He's much better at it than I am. Just one of the things that came up recently, we used to go, that used to be what you would write in your styles, optimize legibility. It turns out, and people are just finding out, that it doesn't really work that well because some browsers don't use it properly. So it's easier, safer to use font feature settings, and you can look it up on the, caniuse.com, for example, what the features are. This is probably, I think the screenshot is like 2 weeks old. It probably isn't up to date anymore. You see the version numbers there. So those are the open type features that browsers render at any given time. Today, I'm sure it's different. I should have made a new one, but it's 2 weeks old. So the only way to work around that is to use of course, I mean, you know that, to use the proper abbreviations, but you also have to always use the browser in front of it. You have to use your MZs and your Ms and your whatever the abbreviations are. Otherwise, there's no way knowing. And why do we want to do this? Because that's what us type designers and that's what us graphic designers want. I mean, okay, on a website, discretionary ligatures, CT and ST is kind of pretty, but also pretty stupid. So I'm not sure whether I want those. Standard ligatures, they're supposed to be nicer in the text flow and help legibility, but quite frankly, I think they're overrated. Numerals, however, linear numerals, that means they're on the baseline. If they're tabular, that's a very, very useful feature because it means if you have sums, they're underneath each other, under the decimal point. In this typeface, you can hardly see the difference, but if you have certain typefaces, the tabulars and the proportionals are totally different. You know what tabular means, right? All the numbers have the same width. If you go to the all-style ones, the difference between tabular and proportional is even more distinct. Small caps are a very useful feature. Swash alternates, okay, if you design a website for a boutique thingy, maybe you need those. But that's the reason why the web is behind, but why we have to use these different features and work with them. Now, that was the type part already. Don't worry. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about, before I show you some of our work, and two of the frequently asked questions, how do we, because the reason I'm doing this is because because I'm 67, so I'm older than most people around, then people don't ask me so much what I've done because it's boring and too much of it, but they do ask, from my experience, not even how we work, but why we work. Why do we do this? Why do we have these clients? Why do we have 60 people here and 30 people there? And why do we do this sort of stuff? So what turns us on, in other words? And I call that attitude. And some of you may know the other magic formula. It's very, very simple. In German, you just don't work with Arschlöchers and you don't work for Arschlöchers. Which means you don't hire people who are assholes and you don't work for clients who are assholes. It's pretty obvious. I mean, you all know some of you might work be properly employed by a proper company, and you can't choose the guy next to you or the lady next to you. And can you imagine working for, I don't know, it's always my nightmare to work for some insurance company, and you sat next to somebody who, likes cats, or no, sorry, I won't get too personal. I don't like cats, so whatever, some person who you just can't get on with, and you're stuck with that person maybe for the next 20 years of your life. And we have the privilege and the great situation that we can pick the people that we work with. I've had people walk in, showed me their portfolio, where I knew half of it was stolen from somebody else. It was copy and pasted, sometimes from my own work. I mean, people are so fucking naive. They come in there and they show this and say, wait a minute, where did they get that from? Well, actually, my boyfriend was an intern at Meta Design in 1997. I think, well, okay, my doctor's against me. I go to a doctor who I trust, who's been to university, you know, has a white one. He has to have a white overcoat on, of course. Also has to be a nice guy, you know, with a clean waiting room, or no waiting room if possibly. That sort of stuff, you know. Why don't they treat us like that? And that's also important, you know. Why haggle about fucking prices? Look, we have hourlies and we have dailies. We give value for money, and you know, those people don't think anything about buying a car for 150,000 euros, dollars, or whatever. But when it comes to us, they say, oh, what, 600 a day? That's a lot of money. You know, I would have to work 2 minutes for that sort of thing, you know. So we don't go for that shit anymore either. Now, I heard that Dan, who was on this morning, apparently talked about this one already, which is for us very, very important, the waterfall process. You've heard the word before, and in a minute I'll show you the alternative, the agile. We started doing this, I can't remember now, 4 or 5 years ago. Harry, wo bist du? 4 years ago. And we have a commitment to being agile even with our traditional, i.e. branding, i.e. non-digital clients, because we still have people who want brands and not websites necessarily, because the same happens all over there. People come to you and say, design me a brochure, say, let's be old-fashioned. And it'll be, you know, sort of that is sizey and maybe 32, 64, maybe 200 pages, maybe 12 pages, whatever. Design me a brochure. You say, have you got any copy? No, let's look at some pictures first. Have you got any pictures? No, just, you know, make some. So you're designing totally in the dark. I mean, it's like saying, you know, put a sack over your head and go shopping. I mean, what the fuck is that? So you can't do that. So you design something and then they say, oh, I see. Yeah, no, I actually want bigger pictures. And then you make bigger pictures and they say, you know what? We thought we want some more copy in there. So you end up making 7 or 8 iterations. Then they say, how come it costs so much money? Because you don't know what the fuck you want. So why don't you sit down with whoever provides your content, give us your content. There's another one of these bloody Beatles here. And maybe I should take a hint. Maybe I should wash. And then you go and in our case, design me a website. So you make some wireframes, and then you implement a nice website that has sort of little functions, and then eventually, and then they say, oh, you know what, we need another 6 landing pages, and actually we also need a Chinese version because we are very strong in export in China. And then half a year later, you spend, you know, a few $100,000 to say, you know what, we actually need to get into an SAP system to tap our database for our products. You know, it's called content. And you start over because it's a totally different premise. So that doesn't work. It just does not work. It breaks there already. It breaks there. It costs a lot of money. It takes a lot of time until everybody's unhappy. Clients unhappy. We're unhappy. Everybody's lost money. Instead, we insist, okay, guys, you've got to have your content. It doesn't have to be 100%. You know, at least as long as we know you're going to have short paragraphs or long paragraphs. Are there lots of headlines? Are there no headlines? Are you going to have captions? Are there going to be videos in there? Just think before you come to us. And then we start, as we design, at least in our case for the online stuff, the first day pretty much, or the first few days, we write some code. Because you might as well make a web page in HTML rather than making it in bloody Photoshop, which is really stupid because you spend all your time pushing pixels, which of course we all love because it looks so great, crisp on the screen, and you know, you can really get turned on by pixels, but then the client doesn't look at pixels. You know, the client wants a sketch, whatever that is these days. So each one of those undulations is a sprint these days, which takes a week or 2 weeks. Maybe I'll talk about a project in a minute that has taken a few more weeks. And you go to beta early because you also know that every website is always in beta anyway. If you wait 2 years before it's perfect, the market has changed, the products have changed, the language has changed. They want to export to Russia or to Ukraine or vice versa or whatever, or not, as the case may be. So it's fucked again. So why wait 2 years? Just do it now and then get some shit because people will give you shit, but then you repair it as you work through new iterations. And another thing which is difficult for a sort of an anal nerd like me, you can't control it. You can write manuals, you can write style guides, I'll show you one in a minute, but every time we turn around, some guy, Korea, Japan, China, America, whatever, has invented another tablet system, interface, operating system. We can never keep up with that stuff. We have a wall in the office that sometimes has 20 or 30 items on it, you know, little tablets that we buy, borrow, steal, get from somewhere. Actually, we don't steal. I sponsored some now and again. And we test, but there's no way you can test everything. You'd have to literally live in a shop, and even they haven't got everything. So, because by the time you've done it, it's out of fashion, out of order. So forget that total control that us graphic designers are used to, because, well, what happens with a graphic designer is you design a brochure, and you can pretty much define, you know, the colors, the paper quality, and then what always happens then, the bookbinder, the guy who trims it, always cuts it off. He cuts off 3 millimeters too many, or obliquely, or whatever. So even our work, we haven't got 100% control over. But we certainly haven't got in digital media anymore at all. But what I like about the way at least we work is that while this is all digital and all really sort of, you know, scarily rule-based, and everything has commands and codes, and you can't make any mistakes, not even a word space. That's why you guys use monospace type. But, you know, the way we work in the office is pretty, I mean, this looks pretty improvised. I mean, somebody writes it up on the wall, and you can see the same pictures cropping up on various positions, because you can be a developer in one team, maybe pretty much on your own, and you can be with another 3 developers in another team, or you can be a graphic designer on one team and develop in another, depending on your skill set. And as I said earlier, the skill sets develop as you work, certainly in our place. But essentially, the work that we designers have always done is this. We get something in our house, and we take it apart like kids do, and look at the parts and then put them together again. And then more often than not, at least when I used to work on cars or now on printing presses, there was always a few pieces left over. Not a wheel necessarily, but there was always a bucket full of nuts and bolts that I didn't manage to fit in, but the car always worked. So everything has a redundancy in, and certainly websites will work with a lot less than perfect code, as you know. And what's also happy for me to report that we're back to really primitive sketching. I mean, this is what I did when I was like 7. I mean, not on an iPhone, and we even have a rubber stamp in the office that, you know, full-size iPhone, you just stamp it everywhere, and then I guess that's our wireframes these days. I don't think we do proper wireframes. And, you know, nothing has replaced a group of guys huddling together, making a website by moving, you know, actually printed pieces around. And the most important part, of course, and see, Harry's imitating my hairstyle. He's just a couple of years behind me, or ahead of me, whatever. The best thing is to get a few guys who are like-minded but have different skill sets in front of the project and work together. Because Harry knows things that Mike on the left doesn't, or Spiros, or Greek guy maybe doesn't, and between them, they can crack pretty much any problem. They don't have to be 65 years old, or a shitload of experience, or 45 academic degrees. They're just cool kids who work out stuff. And I wish this room was a little cooler. So that's the attitude. Now let's look at some work, just very quickly. How am I doing? I've been 40 minutes? Okay, I'll be quick. I was supposed to finish in 5 minutes. I won't say much. You can see for yourself some of the Red Bull stuff we do in Ableton. These are all websites that you can go to without my help. As you maybe noticed that everything is pretty strong typographically. This was the project. Schweizer Illustrierte is a sort of gossipy yellow press thing, nothing that you and I would read. Well, I don't know. Never mind. We wouldn't, but as you know, one of the most important things about those sort of publication websites are the ads. And with responsive these days, you know that those ads need to be there, but there's no room for them. So they need to have different iterations, and Harry and our guys worked out a pretty clever system so that the ads would reload in all sort of different shapes and sizes. And this particular project, which managed that, so you know they get their money for the ads, got us this project for Die Zeit, which the Germans here know is a very successful weekly newspaper. It's massive, it's big, it sells 500,000 a week, and it's still growing. And has a pretty good website. We're redoing at the moment. We started with a magazine, which is also a printed little addendum. And half the reason why we got this job, because Harry did a really great job of selling our ability to adapt the ads to various formats, because they wanted fully responsive. No major German website, by the way, Spiegel, all the big newspapers have a responsive website yet, none of the big publications, because it's a lot of trouble, and they have all these ancient content management systems. So this is on there. Makes it a little interesting. It's not a video, it's a little irritation, especially this one here. It's live, the new one comes out on Thursday. You don't expect that, right? It's a short little loop, so it's not a big download issue, which is of course the one thing that people always throw at you. Oh my God, it'll take forever to download. No, this doesn't take forever to download. It's a very simple little thing, but it's kind of like, wait a minute, what happened there? And you do spend a little more time on it. So now to the one practical project, and then I'm done. People in Germany or elsewhere might know that this is black and yellow, right? Light, no light. This is FontShop, digital, 01. A project that we started last September. Katharina, who's running the project. As you can see, now and again, you need to concentrate and tell the photographer, fuck off. I think that's what she's thinking. So this is the present FontShop website. And it was always a little embarrassing because I'm the founder of FontShop. So to go in there and say, look guys, maybe Erik Spiekermann needs to build a website, it's kind of like a little embarrassing. I don't really like that very much, but okay, we did, and they're happy that we did. And it starts like any other job. The client, i.e. FontShop, actually did some homework, and for a few weeks before they came to us, they had content. And the funny thing is that people on the team, I don't think anybody on the team was really like a big type nerd. Katharina had done music before, and the developers were kind of, they're used to type because we handle it all the time, but there wasn't anybody in there who'd ever built anything remotely like that type of website, which is a little scary, but it's also great because it means that they came to it just very much like a customer who would want to buy fonts from a website. I'm way too deep into it. Most of the graphic designers here wouldn't be able to do so because they are spoiled, but those kids really asked all the right questions and spent a long time gathering information. But the client, that's the good thing about it, actually gave us content. And we just, as you can see, this is real content. This is not final copy. It's changed a lot. It's still changing. But you scribble your ideas into the content because you know what's coming up. And I'm always surprised how much we still print. If you want to have a website that scrolls all the way down to the floor, you print it out and stick it on somebody's head. Not necessarily. So, again, I'm surprised how much we printed. There's the black and the yellow issue, but how do you show type on a screen? It's so much easier if you print it all out and hang it up on the wall. And if you have a logo like FontShop does, which is essentially a yellow, this is one of those projectors that doesn't do yellow. It is bright yellow. If you have that sort of logo, of course, you want that to be a button because it's asking to be a button. So you're sketching little, buttons all the time, but because it's so recognizable, you don't have to use the same one all the time. So you can put it pretty much anywhere because people will learn very quickly. This is why I press because it has that kind of button shape. It doesn't look like a real button in the old fashioned sense. It doesn't have to have a drop shadow or a bevel or something, but people learn. And this is the new feature, by the way, that came live last week. You should go check it out. The tryout on the website is pretty amazing. You can make your own type specimen, and you can send it to somebody else, and they can carry on working with it, adding to it, changing it, printing it out, whatever. It's a type specimen book on your website for free, on your desktop. So this is a little Harry recorded for his lecture at Typo Berlin last weekend. Just went through the website, so I don't have to say anything. I think it's pretty obvious what goes on there. Some of you might have seen this. It's, of course, it went up beta in, 6 weeks ago or something. It's very much in process. It's very much being changed every day. There's the list of bug fixes is pretty long. The list of new features is equally long. There are still fights for certain browsers. There's some database issue. We talked about 150,000 fonts in the database, plus platform. So we talked about 1 million or so items in the database. And there's bound to be mistakes. There's bound to be rendering issues. There's bound to be interface issues. But we decided early on, and God bless us for a client like FontShop, that we can just actually go out and come up with a site that some people just totally hated. Because if you want to find a mistake, of course you find a mistake. But we've had some amazing feedback because all the people who really know this business know that this is great that we actually get genuine feedback, not pseudo feedback. Like Microsoft sells us software that then we pay for and test. This you don't pay for. You test and we hear you, we listen to you. By the way, these little smileys are all made up from typefaces that those guys designed. That's another clever little trick, to pull out 150,000 fonts and make that with it. I have 3 minutes, and I think I might even manage this. How cool is that? So this is the site, and of course it's fully responsive. I mean, you know, why would you want to look at type on your iPhone, really? But you can. You know, I can't tell you shouldn't. It works, and you can enlarge it and not. And so this is the environment, and so far I think we went 11 sprints until the first beta a few weeks ago. We have 3 more sprints. At the moment we're doing sprints every 2 weeks. I think we started off a little more urgently. And the team, about 7 people, 3 or 4 people from FontShop. They have their own back-end guys. They have a user interface person there. 3 people from our side, sometimes 4 from our side, sometimes 3 from their side, and they're sat in the same table, and more often than not, people didn't know who was FontShop and who was us, because it doesn't really matter once the team work together. So to me, partly because of the actual topic of the project and the way they're cooperated, this is an absolute fantastic example how to work. And here's our client, Ivo, modestly hiding. You need a client like this who understands, and his boss understands that this is risky because it was open-ended. Maybe what if we'd taken 25 sprints? It would have cost a fortune. You know, we were lucky to do it fairly early. And I urge you to go there to nextFontShop.cryo. This is pretty cool. We have a style guide that our Spiros put up. This goes really deep. Again, I won't go there. You can look it up yourself. It's public. If you go to nextFontShop.com, I mean, you all know about style guides. You know, the various items are on there, because when you work in a team of 7 or 8 people and people keep changing, Ricardo went to New York, somebody else joined for him, you need to have some sort of repertory of items that you don't have to redesign on it. And there's a few hundred in there. It's not a simple website. So my last but one FAQ. People write to me this every day, or to us every day. Yes, you can come and work for us. Go to the website. Right now we're looking for front-end developers, Scrum Master, or female Scrum Mistress, whatever they're called, back-end developers, internships. This is Berlin and Amsterdam. I don't know what a senior service designer is, quite frankly, but if you can call yourself one, you can get a job, okay? It's one of those jobs. Basically, we're looking for people with brains and attitude. If you're bright and if you're a cool guy or lady, come work with us. If you're an arsehole, don't even. Who would know anyway? We'll tell you. In not so many words, of course. I mean, we'll say, you know, maybe how about a taxi shine? You know, the Germans know what that means. You learn to ride a cab. And the other FAQ, and then I'm going to be actually 4 minutes short here. I'm sorry. What's next for Spiekermann? This is me, and this is next for me. 5 Minuten.
Ja, es geht, glaube ich, weniger um Hände schmutzig machen, als daran überhaupt was anzufassen. Ich finde das mit dem Schweren und mit dem Dreck gar nicht so romantisch.
5 drüber, tut mir leid.
Es geht nur darum, überhaupt anzufassen. Dass man das Material selber sich aneignet. Ich kann es nur immer wieder mit selber Musik machen und mit selber Kochen vergleichen. Also die eigene Pizza kneten ist ein Erlebnis. Es ist was anderes, als die aus der Tiefkühltruhe holen und in den Ofen schieben. Und jeder, der es mal gemacht hat, wird nie wieder Tiefkühlpizza essen. Das ist einfach, sich selber das Essen zubereiten, ist eine grundsätzliche Erfahrung, wie sich selber eben auch die Druckvorlage zubereitet. Das ist eine glaube ich, ganz, ganz grundsätzliche Erfahrung, die wir heute kaum noch machen können. Also dieser banalen Tätigkeiten, für mich gehört sowas wie einen Satz zusammenbauen und das in so einer Maschine auf Papier drucken, ist so eine relativ banale Tätigkeit, die auch jeder innerhalb von ein paar Stunden lernen kann. Also man kann das machen, so wie man Brot schneiden lernen kann. Deswegen ist man noch kein Bäcker. Aber man kann das erstmal machen. Man hat das wunderbare Ergebnis, dass man aus merkwürdigen mechanischen Zutaten mit ein bisschen Farbe und ein bisschen Geschick und ein bisschen Aufpassen und einer komischen alten Maschine plötzlich schwarz auf weiß was nach Hause tragen kann. Das ist schon eine erstaunliche Erfahrung. Was passiert heute, wenn wir zum Beispiel jetzt große Schriften herstellen? Machen wir die im 3D-Druck, schneiden wir die aus Kunstharz, werden die gefräst, werden die gelasert? Das hat noch keiner gemacht, weil es eine tote Technik ist. Ich möchte also die tote Technik der Hochdruckschrift mit den neuen Techniken der digitalen Welt verbinden.
Things disappear on the internet, and I think what's so cool about printing is that it's more permanent, you know, and you have a deeper connection to what you make.
Wir wollen ja auch ein bisschen forschen, was heute Hochdruck uns noch bieten kann, ob es als künstlerisches Ausdruckmittel oder als Freizeitbeschäftigung oder als beschäftige mich mit der Vergangenheit als Grounding, also als um wieder ein bisschen Boden unter die Füße zu kriegen, von dem Virtuellen weg.
Yeah, having restraints. You know, having designing and printing things with restraints of the technology.
Und diese Beschränkung bringt erstmal eine eigene Ästhetik, sie bringt aber auch eine Qualität in meine eigene Arbeit, die ich nicht mehr gewohnt bin. Ich muss mir so viele Sorgen nicht machen, es ist einfacher. Ich muss weniger entscheiden. Und ich weiß, dass ich und dass viele meiner Kollegen darunter leiden, dass sie andauernd was entscheiden müssen, den ganzen Tag über. Diese Entscheidung, jene Entscheidung, 1000 Sachen machen. Und da nicht. Da macht man die Schublade auf und das, was drin ist, nimmt man und damit wird gut. Und das teilt sich mit im Ergebnis. Man merkt, das war das Optimale. Wir haben 2 FAGs. Dann gab es einen deutschen Ableger, die hieß Graphics. Die haben die FAGs nachgebaut. Fast die gleiche Technik. Dann haben wir in der gleichen Art die deutsche Firma Corex, Max Simmel GmbH aus Pforzheim. Die haben die bis vor Jahren hergestellt. War der Marktführer in Deutschland. Von dem haben wir eine kleine, auch handbetrieben. Ich habe also eine Corex Nürnberg, das ist die kleine. Dann habe ich eine Corex Berlin, die ist ganz elektrisch. Da wird also auch der Druckzylinder wird elektrisch bewegt. Dann habe ich die ganz große, die ist dann Querformat, also der Zylinder ist 80 cm breit. Und das Ding ist so schwer, dass kann man kaum bewegen, den Zylinder. Der wird dann mit dem Motor betrieben, der einen Höllenkrach macht, hat mehrere Keilriemen und hat ein paar Pumpen. Es gibt sogar ein Gebläse, dass das Blatt Papier nach dem Druck wieder abgelegt wird auf den Tisch hinten. Also fast wie eine große Vordruckmaschine.
The making movement ever stopped in Germany. I don't think it's a trend. I think it was actually, the Germans always made things.
Die Maschinen halten sich noch 500 Jahre, das ist nicht das Thema. Die Tätigkeit stirbt aus.
Okay, guys, thanks very much. Wiedersehen. Tschüss.
Danke sehr.